Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. James Wade arrived in Europe when there was only 2 months of fighting left in World War II. But in that short time, plus the time that he spent there in occupational duty, he saw plenty of what you now read about in history books, including serving guard duty over the witnesses of the Nuremberg trials. But the stories don't end there, so let's listen. Please welcome College Station's James Wade to Veterans of the Valley. James, it's an honor to know you, to meet you, and I'm glad to have you here on Veterans of the Valley. When we call you College Station's James Wade, we really mean it because you were actually born about 300 yards from the house you live in right now.
Yes, that's true.
In College Station. Talk about College Station that long ago, growing up. The only time you really spent out of College Station was 9 years in Cameron and then your service in World War II. So what was College Station like back in the 20s and the 30s and such?
It was just a small town. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was going to A&M, I could park anywhere on University Drive I chose. And there just wasn't a lot of traffic around here. It's 5,000. The number was about 5,000 at that time. You know,
right.
Enrolled in school.
Right. It was small as compared to now.
Oh,
right?
yes, yes.
You entered the service late in 1944 after you had been at A&M, and you went over to Europe turns out about 2 months before the war ended, but then you remained over there in occupational forces. Talk a little bit about sort of your entry into the Army, and at first you went to 105 Howitzer School, but then you got involved in communications as a telephone lineman.
Yes.
Sort of how did that all develop?
Well, the basic training consisted of 7 months of 105 Howitzer training, and then the next 11 months was telephone lineman work, you know, climbing poles and doing all the things that linemen do.
Is that what they assigned you, or is that what you
No,
want?
That's what I was assigned. That's what I signed up for,
yeah.
And that's what I got.
And that's what you got. So you, just about everything you learned about it, you learned in your basic training, and
yes,
then a lot of on-the-job training, right?
Yes, that's true.
Let's talk about going over to Europe. Again, it was late in the war, late in 1944, and you were on the USS Queen Elizabeth, and it was jam-packed. Talk about that.
Yes, it was. It was built for 2,300 plus people and 600 crew, and there was 22,000 of us that boarded there in New York that day, and of course half of us had to sleep down below at night one night, and then the next night we had to sleep up on deck.
Yeah.
We traded off like that.
Yeah, talk about overbooked. That was an overbooked
Quite.
ocean liner.
But they let us all go, though.
You said that one of the toughest parts, and it may be a little indelicate to talk about, but you said that one of the toughest parts was chow, because a lot of people were getting sick, and it was kind of a messy ship going up and down those steps, right?
Yes, yes. You just as soon do without than make that trip down there.
You could slip on stuff, right?
Yes, right.
That's what you're saying. Talk about what your job was really when you got over there, and what duty you first went into, and your outfit, and sort of. I know that you were sort of part of a recon group.
Yes.
Go into that in more detail. Sort of talk about what your job was over there.
Okay. I was with the C Battery, 924th Field Artillery Battalion in the 99th Division. And I joined the outfit probably within a week after they had crossed the Rhine there at Remagen. And of course I was assigned to this. And what we did telephone work. All of our communications was telephone. You know, the only radio was with forward observers that they could designate when and how far to send the rounds up. You know, they're firing. But so a normal day, we got up first thing in the morning and loaded up with the battery commander, his driver, and then our wire truck, and then we went up and joined the infantry. Got with the infantry, I think we were with the 394th Regiment, and our job was to support them with the howitzers. And so we got set up. We were assigned a location, and we got our guns all set up set up there. And by the time, of course, the wire was all, we went up in order to string the wire, you know, and set up the telephones. But when the main body of the battery got there, we were ready to start firing just in a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, people get an idea about this because you're just in raw country and you're setting up a telephone system in a matter of 15, 20 minutes, right? I mean, that's,
right, yeah.
that was your job. And you had to find like huts or barns or someplace that was covered to put your switchboard so it'd be protected
Correct,
from the
yes.
weather, right?
When we had to dig in out in the open, and then of course we had to use a tarp over the top.
Yeah. And I asked you the other day, I said, you know, certainly it didn't all go right every time. There would be times where the communication would not be there and you'd have to go out and sort of find the problem, find the trouble, find what wire had been run over by a truck or something like that, right? So that was part of your job too.
That was part of it, yes.
Was repairman, is that right? And you said that when you moved locations, you left everything there, right?
Yes, we left everything there, all the wire, and we just took the telephones loose and loaded them up and moved on out. And we didn't worry about picking up the wire.
Yeah, so there's a lot of wire left over in Europe.
Yes, yes.
Somewhere like that. Your story while over there, like we said, 2 months, you know, while the war was still being fought over there that you were, and then the occupational duty. But you have several stories, and I want to just sort of go ahead and go with them. And later on, we're going to talk about how in 2005 you were fortunate enough to go back over there sort of as a reunion trip. And as a matter of fact, we have some photographs later on from that reunion. Talk about Bed Check Charlie and sort of what that involved and how that kind of still affects you now.
Well, Bed Check Charlie had great respect of all the GIs over there. He was a single-engine light plane that flew over on dark nights, real slow.
German plane.
Over the front lines, German plane, just seeking out some glimmer of light that he could call down artillery on. And so we respected him very highly.
So you had to keep all the lights out.
Yes, sir. Sure
because he was hunting for any kind of glimmer of lights to do battle with.
As I mentioned before, that's the only thing that I brought home with me. I can still be out at night. A light plane would fly over, and it makes cold chills go down my back.
Yeah, when you hear the when you hear the low-flying planes, even at your home.
Yeah, right.
The occupation after the war, one of the fascinating parts of your story, of your career, as we mentioned in the beginning, was that you were assigned guard duty actually to the witnesses of the Nuremberg trials.
Yes.
Talk about that part of the occupation duty that you had.
Okay. We had, I'm not sure how many witnesses we had. We had just scads of them, you know. That they came over every day in trucks and took them back to Nuremberg. And then, of course, at the end of the day, they brought them back. But
now this was at Hirschbruck, right?
This was at Hirschbruck. This was about 15 kilometers from Nuremberg.
Right.
And this was kind of a stressful time because, you know, they were civilians, but still they were the enemy, so to speak, or at least relatives of the enemies. And I remember on one occasion that I had to go down the back ranks and see that everybody was in their place when it time to check the roll, you might say. And that really gave you an eerie feeling, down there by yourself, not having any weapon or anything, you know, had to leave that outside. It was just real eerie.
Right, right. Did you know at the time what part of history you were involved in? Did you know much about the trials or what they were all about, or was it just
no idea?
No idea. You just
the trials all developed from the time, you know, after the war was over with.
Right.
And we didn't get a lot of information as to what was going on. We just knew that there were trials going on.
So you learned a lot about what you were doing later on in your life when you took history classes,
That's
right?
Right.
From the history.
I learned more, later than I knew at that time.
Than you knew at that time. Talk about the being called the assignment in Bamberg This is a fascinating story, and sort of the threesome that you were a part of, but actually there were obviously a lot of units like yours all through Germany
Yes.
doing the same thing. Talk about this assignment that I'm referring to.
Okay, we were notified that we were to send 3 people up to Bamberg for some sort of mission. We had no idea what it was when we got there, so we took a Jeep. 3 of us was assigned to go, and so we took the Jeep and went up there. And then there was a meeting set up at 10 o'clock there in the city government, the city's area there. And so when we went in, we were told that the first thing we were told that this was a top secret mission, that we were not to discuss it among ourselves. The 3 of us that were together, we were in 3 and 3s. We were not to even discuss it among ourselves, you know. And that we would be given one name and an address, and we were to go out and pick up this individual and bring him back and turn him back in there at the location. And so, because this was to happen the day before, so next morning this was to happen at 0600 o'clock throughout all of Germany. And so at 6 o'clock, we were there knocking on the front door. And so we were admitted to the house by the lady of the house, and just told her that we came to see Herr Schmidt, or whatever his name really was.
Right.
And so she called him, he came in, and so we told him, you will get your clothes on and you will go with us. And he didn't
Did he resist at all?
No, none whatsoever.
So it was almost like he was expecting you.
Well, I think maybe that was true, yes. And so he went back to his bedroom to dress, and of course his wife and then 2 little girls, about like 5 and 7, came out. And of course they were all crying, and they were asking questions as to where are you taking him to? How long is he going to be gone? When's he coming back?
Sure.
And all things like that, you know. Well, the only thing we could say was, you know, we don't know.
Right.
And it was well that we didn't have any information, I think, you know.
Yes.
But this is one of the hardest things I think I ever did, to take the man away from his family. And
Right.
they was all in tears. But they had a tearful goodbye.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea what happened. He may have wound up in among the civilian there in Hirschbruck. I'm not sure.
Right. Right. As maybe another witness.
Witness could be, yes.
As a witness. And you mentioned that it's your thought that probably by that time that the German soldiers, the Nazis, may had already been round up, and this may have been
That's
a civilian,
most
like a
likely.
worker or something like that they wanted to.
This was probably 3 weeks or a month after the war was over, and I'm sure that the Nazis were all rounded up before
Right.
that happened.
Do you recall about how long a trip was it from his home back to Bamberg? How long was it?
It was in the same. It was still in Bamberg,
Yeah.
within the same city.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a very long.
No.
Long.
Just
Okay. It was
a couple miles or so, you know.
Okay. So do you recall that couple of mile drive? Did he say anything? Did he?
Didn't say a word.
Just didn't say a word. He just
Couldn't have understood him anyway, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
But no, he didn't make any remarks at all.
Right. And the remarkable thing is that there were several of these units like yours,
Yes.
of 3 or 4 soldiers going out all at about 0600,
0600,
doing the
yeah.
same thing that day
All over Germany, yes.
and bringing them back.
Yes.
And it had to be top secret so that these people wouldn't run. And
Like they told us, you know, a word here and there, it's picked up by a stranger or something,
Right.
can be put together, you know.
could be put together, and you could be chasing these people
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible story, and like you said, this was happening all over Germany at the
Yes.
time. We've got some photographs. Let's go ahead and go to them right now. Some pictures of from your career, an early part of your career, and this is really early. This is the 1941 A&M Consolidated High School football team.
Yes.
And do you know which one you are in that picture? What your number was, or?
I am third from the left without a number.
In the front row?
Yeah, in the front row.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see, third from the left. There you are. Does that mean that you were real good or weren't good enough to get a number, or what?
Well, I was still substituting at that time.
Didn't want to embarrass you there, but you know, eventually you got a number, I'll bet, right?
Yes, eventually.
Okay. There's your Army glam shot, as I like to call it. About how old were you in that picture?
I was probably 20. I had just finished basic training this was on my furlough. I came home before I went overseas.
Right. Right. And you had no idea what was ahead of you.
Had no idea whatsoever.
Just a young raw soldier.
I had never been that far in my whole life.
We talked about the Queen Elizabeth, and this is a picture of it, which was, I mean, by standards, it was a big boat. But
next to the Queen Mary.
Right.
Queen Mary was the largest at that time.
And that's good because, like you said, and you can see there, if you can see the writing, it says 2,200, I believe, and something, or 2,300 passengers it was built for, and you had some 22,000.
Correct.
On that boat, so they were sleeping everywhere.
Oh yeah, they were.
Talk about these pictures. Describe the one on the left, Ian.
That must have been made in Neuendettelsau. That was our first location after the ending of the war. We were stationed there for, I think a couple of months, and we pulled guard duty,
right,
roadblocks and things like that.
And on the right, that's just another.
That's another
mugshot of you.
Yeah.
From the Army. Okay, let's move on. What have we got there on the left?
Okay, I have a 30-30 carbine on my shoulder, and that's one of our howitzers in the background there.
Right.
And I'm not sure, that may have been made at the time that after the war was over, we were turning our equipment in. That's probably what it was.
Right.
And then on the right, that was made down at Garmisch. This was our center, and a buddy of mine and I went down there for one weekend, and of course we ran into lots of snow and so forth, and we had you noticed that we were skiing on those little small hills there, you know. But we had been up to the top and we rode a cog train up there, and it was snowing, just snowing to beat the band up there. You know, you couldn't see a thing, and your hand in front of your face hardly. But that was a real nice weekend.
We're going to talk about this in a moment, and we referred to it earlier in 2005, which would have been the 65th anniversary of the, I guess, you went on a reunion trip. Talk a little bit about that and what we're looking at there. That's the group in the top picture, and then talk about that and then what we're looking at in the bottom picture.
Okay, this was the tour that we made, and we were over there at the 60th anniversary of VE Day.
Right, 60th, right. 60th.
Yeah, and so this was the veterans that went along, and we had a total of about 69 people, but the rest of them were, were family of the veterans. And we were out right there on Elsenborn Ridge, which there was much of the fighting was done during the Battle of the Bulge at that location. And in fact, there's two of those gentlemen, veterans that was at that very location during the time that there was one that had gotten shrapnel, and he was out there. Of course, you can see how open that is, and then the Ardennes forest starts right down the hill. And of course it's all forest.
Right.
And he was wounded one morning, and the medics could not get out to him. He had to lay in 2 feet of snow all day long before they were able to get out there under cover of darkness to get him back in. And,
you're in that top picture. I think you're in the front row, third from the right.
I have light blue trousers on, yeah.
Yeah, with the blue trousers. And now the bottom picture. Talk about that.
Okay, that was a monument that was donated by the Belgium people. And from here I can't read any of the inscription on there, but anyway, it was thanking the 99th Division for their service in that area.
That's quite quite a tribute to go over there. And this was during that reunion also, as you were going through the forest, and you came upon essentially that was a bunker right there.
Yes,
right?
yes, it was.
Were you surprised to walk through and see remnants of war still?
I was surprised.
Still in the terrain like that?
Everything else was lush green everywhere. Everything was rebuilt, but to find something like that had been left for this 60-odd years, or the 60 years, I was amazed to find it.
Amazing. Some incredible pictures there, indeed. There's more stories. Talk about, if you will, you were the duty that you had guarding an SS hospital, and what really came about to be your first sort of hand-to-hand combat, although you didn't really realize it was going to turn into that. Yes. Talk about what happened then at the hospital.
Well, I was sent to the hospital as corporal of the guard, and had four guards to go with me. Mm-hmm. And so we were guarding the 4 doors into the hospital, the front, back, and the 2 end doors. And this was in Aschaffenburg, Germany. Right. And so we had, I think we had the 12 to 8 shift. Mm-hmm. And so it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a loud, I was in the office there, there was a loud knock at the door. And so I said, come in. And the door flew open. And there stood an SS trooper with nothing on but his shorts, with a knife in his left hand, bloody all over. He had slashed his forehead, his cheeks, his throat, his arms, his chest, stomach, all the way down. He had an awful dull knife because he was just oozing blood. Nothing was flowing, but it was just oozing blood. And so, of course, the first thing I did was pull my .45, and I said, "You get out of here." And he said, "Schießen, schießen." And so I knew then that he had started the job he couldn't finish. He wanted some help with it, Right. And so, anyway, the first thought I had though was there was a blanket on the cot down that I was standing beside, and I said, "Well, if I can pick up that blanket, get it over his head, I might be able to take the knife away from him." And so I picked the blanket up, and so he charged me, and I threw the blanket up, and he stepped back. Well, he did the same thing again. The third time when he charged, well, he grabbed the blanket and jerked it out of my hands. And so I fired twice, and one of the bullets got him in the left hip. Mm-hmm. And he went slowly down to the floor. Right. And so there was a little window there. I raised that window and I dived out head first. I was glad to get out of that place.
There was a one-on-one battle that you won. Yes. He survived, as far as you know.
As far as I know.
But it's just part of war that people don't think about. It's there's different kind of combat.
We thought combat was all over with.
You just thought combat was all over with. You talked about. We've got just a few minutes left. You talked about witnessing a convoy of prisoners, of German prisoners. I guess when later in the war, after the war was over, and your recollection about that convoy and how long it was in the German prisons.
Okay, this was still during the war.
During the war, right?
This is following the surrender there at Ruhr Valley,
right?
And where we helped capture 325,000 prisoners, and so they were trucking them off to some of the detention centers. I'm sure that some of the Americans had been freed from, and so as I remember, there was guarding this group, this convoy. There was a jeep, and with an officer and a driver and a machine gunner in the front, and 10 or 15 miles back, this convoy was followed by a jeep, an officer, a driver, and a machine gunner.
Right.
This was a guard. This was all the guard that they had.
Right.
But I'm sure they didn't want to go anywhere. They were ready for it to be over with.
Indeed. It was just miles and miles of trucks with
yes.
with these prisoners, and
yes.
They were ready. That was a sight to see. There's
Yeah,
no
it was.
doubt. There's no doubt about that. Couple of minutes left. You're discharged. You come back. You married Dorothy in 1946. You have 2 daughters,
Yes.
5 grandchildren, and a bunch of great grandchildren. I know you lost Dorothy in 2003. You have a special person in your life right now, a friend that you get to visit, and that's wonderful. Talk. And you're working. You're a working man who's working 3 days a week at Texas A&M. Talk about, a lot of people your age are retired now, but you're still a working man. Talk about what you're doing.
Well, I retired in 1988 from power line construction.
Yes, sir.
And I was off 3 years, and I needed something to do. So a friend of mine was the director of GERG, and so I went over to see him, and he said, well, when I have something, I'll call you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he called me in a couple of months, and I went to work. That was 15 years ago. I worked 10 years full-time, and then now I'm working half-time.
Right. And so you go to work, what, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and still pull a paycheck. And
Yeah, and have some of the nicest people to work for in the world. Really, I do.
you obviously like doing it. I mean, it keeps you
I do.
invigorated, right?
Right. I do that. I'm doing the same thing now as I was when I first started, working in the environmental lab.
Yeah. That's incredible. That really is. And your 2 daughters, I believe Terry is a school teacher in Lakey.
Yes.
And your other daughter, her name is?
Locke,
and she lives here in Bryan College Station.
yes.
So you have family here, so you get to see family and keeping active, and that's just tremendous.
What I hadn't told you before, on Tuesday night, we still have our family meal together.
Wonderful.
This has been going on 20 years, I guess.
We're out of time. Thank you for your service. It's a great story.
Thank you.
Most men, certainly veterans who were born in the 1920s, are retired by now, but as you've heard, James Wade has a passion for everything that he does. Serving as a communications man in the European theater, or fighting off a crazed German in self-defense combat, are still today going to work 3 days a week and drawing a paycheck. Just as his 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren are proud of him, we are too. We salute James Wade. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.